Hello everyone, welcome back for lesson 3 of the Algebra 1 and Algebra 1 Honors Summer Pack. Today we're going to go ahead and go into properties, so let's go ahead and go over those. Okay, so properties are kind of an important thing because it allows you to understand why we do certain steps. And there will be questions that ask you to justify your work, so you want to know what properties allow you to do what. So let's talk about these. So commutative property we learned before, so it is when we are changing the order of things over addition and over multiplication. Okay? And additives just means the things that are being added, and changing the order of the factors, things that are being multiplied together. So, and there's some examples. We can say that A plus B is the same thing as doing B plus A. It would give you the same answer. If at any point I'm going a little too fast, please feel free to pause the video and you can catch up. Okay? Associative property, again, we do over addition and multiplication. It is when we change the grouping of the things that we are adding and multiplying. So we're going to change the grouping symbols. So if we did A plus the result we get when we do B plus C, it's the same thing if we did A plus B first and then added C. Same thing with multiplication. The next one is identity property, again over addition and multiplication. That if you have a number plus 0, you'll get that same number, or a number times 1, you'll get that same number. So it's the sum of a real number and 0 will give you the original number, and the product of a real number and 1 is the original number. Okay. Inverse property, which is kind of a big deal when we talk about algebra. We're going to be using that property a lot. Inverse property is again over addition and multiplication. Okay. If we do what it says is that it's a sum of a number and its opposite will give us 0. Okay. What happens though, and what people get a little confused with, is sometimes if we're adding a negative number, that's the same thing as subtraction. So saying 4 minus 4 is still inverse property. Well, we can change it to be, we can change it so it's 4 plus negative 4. And the same thing goes with multiplication. Multiplication is just the product of a number and its reciprocal, so like the fraction version, and it will always equal 1. So we have A times 1 over A equals 1. Multiplying by the reciprocal is the same thing as doing division. So if you did A divided by A, that would still give you 1. So it's the same thing. So even though there's subtraction and division happening, what really is happening is the addition of a negative or the multiplication of the reciprocal. Okay? Distributive property, we already talked about. So it's a number being multiplied with a sum or difference, and it gets multiplied with everything. Okay? And the last one, which I think I forgot to put on the notes, you guys can just write it in, is the multiplicative property of 0, which just says a number being multiplied with 0 will always equal 0. Okay? Now here comes the new kinds of properties, which are properties of equality. They are reflexive, symmetric, transitive, substitution, addition of equality, subtraction of equality, multiplication of equality, and division of equality. Most of these you've already seen and worked with. Now we're just giving them a name. So reflection property says a number is equal to itself. So if you have A, it equals A. I know. Symmetric, it says that the order of the equality, meaning the order of the equation, does not matter. I wrote the wrong thing, so you guys can cross it out. You can flip your equation around and it still means the same thing. So if you say A equals B and someone next to you said B equals A, you'd both be right. They both mean the same thing. Okay? Transitive property says that two numbers equal to the same number are equal to each other. Okay? So if A equals B and B equals C, well then A must equal C. Substitution says that a number that is equal to an expression can be replaced. You can replace the expression with it. So if you know that x equals 4, you can go ahead and put a 4 in for x. That's just the property. We already do it. We're just naming the property. So if x equals y, we can replace y with all the x's in the expression. Okay? The addition of equality says that if you're going to add something to one side, you have to do it to the other side to make sure it stays equal. It has to remain an equation, so both sides need to be equal to each other. So if we had x plus y and we wanted to add z to the x, we have to add z to the y as well. That's what's going to keep it balanced and equal. Subtraction, same thing, but if you're going to subtract something from one side, you have to do it to the other side to keep it equal. So if I had x equals y and I wanted to subtract z, I have to do it to both the x and y. Multiplication of equality. If you multiply something by one side of the equation, you must multiply the same thing on the other side to keep it equal. So again, I have to multiply everything by z with the x and y. And division, you can probably guess. You divide something on one side, you got to do it to the other side to keep it equal. So again, most of these already we're doing, now you just have a name for it. And names are important because we will have to justify our steps. So here's an example of someone who worked out an equation. Okay, it's just a two-step equation. And they did all their work because sometimes you'll have to give reasons why you're doing that step. You can't just do it because you feel like it. We have to have mathematical reasons behind it. So we started off with the original problem, 74 equals 8 plus 3b. Then we did this next step where we subtracted 8 from both sides because we're trying to get rid of this 8 here. Well, if we're trying to get rid of the 8 by subtracting 8 from both sides, that's the subtraction property of equality. You're subtracting by 8 on both sides. Okay? Then the next step, what they did is they moved the 8's next to each other. So it was 8 minus 8 plus 3b. Well, all I did here was change the order. So the way I got to this step was through commutative property of addition. The next thing they did was 34 minus 8 gave them 66, and 8 minus 8 gives them 0. So again, I'm doing 8 minus 8. That really means I'm adding the negative 8 and getting 0. So that's the inverse property of addition on this side. Now over here, because I just did 74 minus 8 and replaced it with the 66, that's the substitution. Most of the time on tests and everything, we're going to be more concerned about the inverse property happening here, not the result we get from basic arithmetic. Okay? Then we had 0 plus 3b and just replaced it with the 3b. So anything that's being added with 0 gives you that same number. That's the identity property of addition. Then I went ahead and divided by 3 on both sides. Well, I'm dividing both sides by 3. That is the division property of equality. And this shouldn't say solution. What I did was I divided by 3. Or another way of thinking of it is I multiplied by 1/3. So that's actually the inverse of multiplication when I divide by itself. That's the inverse of multiplication happening on this side. And over here is just basic substitution because I'm replacing it with what it's equal to. Okay? So now you guys are going to try it on your own. It is a little tricky. We will work on it in algebra. But go ahead and give it a try on your own. Okay? That's it for this video. And we'll go over it in algebra for sure. Bye.